Hundreds of supporters of the Palestinian movement Hamas marched after Friday prayers in the southern Gaza Strip. Scores of people rallied in Ukraine in support of the LGBT community. And in Colombia, at least 2 people were injured as a result of 2 bomb attacks against police headquarters in the department of Cauca. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Hundreds of supporters of the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas have marched after Friday prayers in the Gaza Strip to celebrate the ceasefire after 11 days of bombardment by the Israeli regime that left hundreds dead and thousands wounded. Crowds of people took to the streets of Gaza as the ceasefire took hold at 2 a.m. Spontaneous celebrations also broke out in East Jerusalem and across the occupied West Bank. The 11-day Israeli military operation killed more than 200 Palestinians and brought widespread devastation to the occupied Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. Our Al Mayadeen collaborator in the Gaza Strip brings us more details following the end of the airstrikes by the Israeli regime.
Well, today is the first day of the ceasefire imposed by the resistance to the Israeli occupation. The population took to the street to explore the city after the destruction and to look for their belongings among the rubble and to visit the families of the martyrs and the wounded. An immense jubilation fills the chests of the Palestinians for winning the victory, achieved by the resistance, despite all the devastation and destruction and the human losses among the martyrs and the wounded. The people came out at dawn today with joy and happiness for the victory of the resistance against Israeli occupation. This occupation was trying to break the will of the Palestinian people, but what we see today on the ground reflects a different situation. What we have seen is a solid and steely Palestinian will that defies the Israeli occupation. Children and young people dressed in their own war-end and Ramadan holiday clothes, as it had coincided with the Israeli occupation fires, shelling and missiles. Children, men and women took to the street in a beautiful scene that indicates the deep confidence of their people in their resistance, thus giving a new ultimatum to the Israeli occupation and threatening it, that if it violates the truce, it will also violate the truce, that is, it won't bomb the occupied area.
Thousands of Palestinians gathered at Al-Aqsa Mosque compound celebrating the ceasefire between Gaza and Israel after 11 days of deadly attacks. Celebrations were also heard in Gaza minutes after the truce came into effect, as cars honked their horns and guns were fired in the air, while in the occupied West Bank, joyful crowds also took to the streets. Egypt, which mediated the agreement, said it will send 2 delegations to monitor the ceasefire. The truce came after international diplomatic efforts and growing pressure to bring an end to the most intense Israeli attacks over Palestine since 2014 war in Gaza. According to the Gaza Ministry of Health, during the latest attacks, at least 66 Palestinian children were killed and nearly 200 people were injured and tens of thousands displaced. Hours later, Israeli police stormed Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque, firing rubber bullets and stun grenades at Palestinians. According to health authorities, 20 Palestinians were wounded. Also in the neighborhood Sheikh Jarrah in occupied East Jerusalem, Palestinians say they have been placed under a siege by Israeli authorities. Israeli police have been preventing non-residents from entering the neighborhood, which has been closed off. On Friday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged to respect the Israeli-Palestinian ceasefire after days of daily attacks. The Secretary General stated that Israeli and Palestinian leaders have a responsibility beyond the restoration of calm to start a serious dialogue to address peace for the region. He also emphasized that the Gaza Strip is a fundamental part of the future Palestinian state and no effort should be spared to achieve true national reconciliation. Guterres recalled that the death, suffering, and the destruction of the past 10 days only pushed the prospect of sustained peace further into the future, and that is why an immediate ceasefire and a Middle East peace process are the only road to a lasting solution. China has welcomed the ceasefire in Gaza following 11 days of escalating tensions sparked by Israel. The Asian country also announced the urgent delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestine to support Palestinians in dealing with the crisis.
China will provide $1 million of emergency humanitarian assistance to Palestine in cash, provide humanitarian material support to the best of its ability in light of Palestine's needs, and take an active part in the reconstruction of Gaza. We are also to provide $1 million in assistance to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, and 200,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine to the Palestinian people to offer them practical help. In order to prevent the tragedy of the Palestine-Israel conflict from happening again, the international community should promote the resumption of peace talks between the two sides to achieve a comprehensive, just, and sustainable solution to the Palestinian issue on the basis of the two-state solution. China will push the UN Security Council to comprehensively review the Palestinian issue and reconfirm the two-state solution.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet approved on Thursday a ceasefire to halt the 11-day military operation in occupied Gaza Strip. Netanyahu's office said in a statement that Israel's security cabinet had agreed to accept an Egyptian proposal for a mutual ceasefire without any preconditions. Meanwhile, far-right Israeli lawmakers, including of some Netanyahu's closest political allies, warned him against a ceasefire agreement with Hamas resistance. At least 230 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip over the past 11 days, according to the Gaza health officials. Airstrikes rocked the Gaza Strip late on Thursday, just before Israel and Hamas announced a ceasefire, ending a devastating 11-day Israeli attack that claimed hundreds of lives. A surveillance camera in the native Hazara in Israel, close to the border with the occupied Palestinian territory, recorded several explosions, lighting up the night sky. The Israeli army did not immediately specify what was being targeted in the area, from where it claimed that rockets were fired by the Palestinian resistance movements. More news after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Candidates running for the seats in the Algerian parliament kick off their campaigning this week for next month's legislative elections. Campaigning to choose new lawmakers began on Thursday for the many hopefuls. There are over 1,400 candidates lists with some 600 represented political parties and just over 800 made up of independent candidates, including young people and women.
There have been changes and upheaval inside the structure of power itself, but also in everything that accompanies and signs the rules of the game and renew it. It is a matter of rebuilding something new. So, this campaign there could be the first step of a change wanted, desired by the Algerians, so that we will a system that meets the standards of the rule of law.
The Supreme Eurasian Economic Council has met on a video conference to strengthen its integration process. Presidents of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and the acting Prime Minister of Armenia participated in the meeting, as well as the heads of state of Uzbekistan and Cuba as observer states of the Eurasian Economic Union. The meeting will approve the main guidelines of the macroeconomic policies of the member countries for the period of 2021 to 2022 and will evaluate the progress of the efforts to eliminate the obstacles found in the bloc's domestic market during 2020. Decisions will also be made to boost the efficiency of the single market for services, increasing the level of essential medicines productions and unifying legislation in the agricultural sector. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has highlighted the strong ties of friendship and cooperation that connects the Caribbean nation with the member countries of the Eurasian Economic Union.
Hereby express our willingness to establish an effective cooperation with the member states of the Eurasian Economic Union based on the exchange of experiences between the experts of our countries, medical cooperation, and collaboration with our vaccine candidates. We also declare ourselves ready to begin the process of inclusion in the common market for medicines, devices, and medical technology, whose creation is established by a treaty of the Eurasian Economic Union.
Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Friday that Spain will allow vaccinated travelers to visit the country from June 7th as the European nation aims to revive its tourism industry.
Travelers will only have to scan their QR code on a radar, and they will no longer have to wait at checkpoints. So will facilitate mobility, which is the ultimate goal.
I think we are able to recover the gross domestic product that we have before the appearance of COVID-19, just 3 years since the beginning of the crisis. This is very important because it took us 8 years to recover from the financial crisis of 2008. 3 years compared to 8 years. I believe that it also proves of the response capacity that the European Union has had to face this economy, social and health calamity that we are going through.
Italian political parties and citizens groups have marched through the streets of Rome to demand changes in global health care. It came as G20 leaders got together for a virtual summit to work on a plan for health issues in the post-COVID-19 era. While Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen hosted the conference together in Rome to discuss vaccine distribution, patent sharing, and pandemic preparedness, organizers said they were calling for a radical transformation of health policy to stop the commercialization of health.
We are demonstrating today in Rome to tell the European Union, to Ursula von der Leyen, and also the Italian government that vaccine must be free from patents. We must administer vaccines to all the people on the planet and not in the interest of multinational companies. Ursula von der Leyen is already bound by a motion voted by the European Parliament, and yet the European Commission is still defending Big Pharma. So we are here protesting against a G20 that not only does not stand up for the Palestinian people, but does not stand up for the health of all humanity.
Scores of people rallied in Ukraine on Saturday in support of the transgender and LGBT community. Crowds gathered in the capital Kyiv, waving flags and chanting as they called on the government to change legislation that they see as discriminatory. In 2019, the World Health Organization accepted new measures which gave greater rights to those wishing to change their gender registered at birth and no longer class the decision as a mental health or behavioral disorder. The Ukraine Health Ministry has not accepted these measures yet. People wishing to change gender in Ukraine currently have to pass a psychiatric exam. Some activists opposing the march also attended and were separated by lines of police.
Trans March is a march of transgender and non-binary people who are fighting for their rights not to be discriminated against in Ukraine and the right to be normal, not some kind of sick.
In order to have the right to change gender in documents, we have to make a psychiatric examination. On an international level, this change happened already, but we don't know when it will happen in Ukraine.
The late Congolese independence hero Patrice Lumumba's last remains are said to be repatriated home from Belgium. His remains are to be returned to the Democratic Republic of Congo 60 years after he was assassinated and dissolved in acid by the country's former colonial power, Belgium. Lumumba is known to have been killed on January 17th by separatists and Belgian mercenaries in the province of Katanga during the chaos that followed the territory's 1960 Declaration of Independence.
A ceremony for the retains of the remains. It's a relief. You know, 60 years is a long time, and we arrive at this situation after years of struggling.
We are not asking for an apology. We are asking for justice. We ask the justice be done. We ask, like any family of a murder victim, that justice be done, that the investigation be carried out, that the culprits be punished, and that there be reparation. That is all we ask.
More news in a minute. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In Colombia, at least 2 people have been injured after 2 bomb attacks against police headquarters in the department of Cauca. Local authorities indicated that unidentified individuals threw an explosive object at the police station in the municipality of Miranda in the department of Cauca. The local government reported that the 2 injured were transferred to a health care center in stable conditions. The executive branch of the department will initiate investigations to determine those responsible for the attack. The family of assassination victims have protested in the city of Cali to demand justice. The protesters demanded the Colombian police to respect human life and uphold people's rights.
My son went down to buy something for his child, and then he looked at a friend who was always there and got to help him. In the video, it's pretty clear that he was helping when the police started shot with the SMAT and they killed my son. But I asked for justice because he was a working boy. He was always working to be able to have money, so that my son would be killed that way, it is not possible. I asked for justice.
Representatives of the Colombian National Strike Committee and the government have met to find a solution to the country's crisis. Both parties have expressed their commitment to a peaceful solution. Despite the good results from the meeting, representatives from the National Strike Committee, however, announced plans for nationwide demonstrations scheduled for next week. President Iván Duque's handling of the national strike and social mobilizations in Colombia are increasingly exposed to the world. 51 deaths, thousands wounded, and more than 25 cases of sexual violence committed by members of law enforcement agencies are not just numbers. However, police brutality does not stop, and several communities are once again targeted by police and para-police groups.
Once again, the station Portal de las Americas has been the epicenter of peaceful demonstrations in the capital city of Bogota. There, the anti-riot squad repressed demonstrators. Not even the presence of Government Secretary Luis Ernesto Gomez could prevent the anti-riot squad from attacking demonstrators, neighbors, and even the health staff protected by national and international laws. In the northeast of Colombia, in the city of Bucaramanga, capital of the Department of Santander, security forces kidnapped a person, an action that was confirmed hours later when the Metropolitan Police took over the case, an action devoid of any legality. Cali, one of the cities hardest hit by police and para-police abuses, once again lived through another night of violence in which several people were reported injured, especially in the community of Siloé, and investigations are ongoing to clarify the situation in a commercial center in Calypso.
The United Nations mission in Colombia has stated that efforts to facilitate a dialogue between the government and the National Strike Committee to find a solution to the crisis in the country are set to continue. According to the UN mission, an equal and fair dialogue is a key to advance in the negotiations. The UN stressed that nonviolence, respect for human rights, and channels for dialogue should be the guidelines for the management of the current situation. Meanwhile, protests continue against the policies of the government of Iván Duque and have taken various forms from traditional demonstrations and to artistic expressions. Protesters will continue to denounce violence, the implementation of the peace agreement, dismantling of the mobile anti-riot squad, the resignation of the several government officials, and a police reform, among other issues. Still in Colombia, the protests are getting an international attention. On Thursday, important shipping companies reported the closure of shipments in the port of Buenaventura on the Pacific coast of the country. This decision is a significant downturn for the country's international trade. Colombia's international trade agents were not notified by the subsidiaries in China that shipping lines in Mares, Costco, and whichever, some of the most important of the world, closed bookings for the port of Buenaventura, the most important port in Colombia, due to the unstable atmosphere inspired by the national strike. And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories, as always, in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.